Today we would be talking about the 11th March current affairs. You see, current affairs that we have been teaching, the current affairs topic that are appearing in the Hindu, Indian Express, Economic Times, Times of India, these kind of newspapers we are bringing you, and whatever is learned through those newspapers, we are putting across it to you so that you can utilize it into the main answer writing session either in GS2, GS3, GS1. Even these kind of topics can be helpful to further build your arguments in the essay paper. No matter actually whether we are bringing it from any other newspaper, I will be giving you the insights that where and how you can use it in which paper also. First news that has appeared today, and it's a good news, that India has signed a free trade pact with four European countries. These four European countries are Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland. And India has signed a free trade agreement with these countries. The goal is to reach $100 billion in investments in the country and almost 10 lakh jobs to be created in the next coming 15 years. So, how this free trade agreement is different from other FTAs that India has signed earlier? Number one, the current FTA that has the target of $100 billion of investment in our country wasn't followed any time earlier. So this is a new unique investment. World over, whichever trade pacts are signed, there are no commitments for investment trade. So India has achieved the investment facilitation promise from these FTA countries, these four European countries, and $100 billion would be invested in the country in coming 15 years. Out of $100 billion investment, $50 billion investment would be coming in next 10 years, and next $50 billion investment would be coming in another 5 years after that. If there is a violation in the commitment to invest $100 billion in the next coming 15 years, then the tariff reductions those India will introduce for these four countries will be affected after that. The EFTA, European Free Trade Association countries, are separate from the European Union countries. So these four countries with which India has signed the free trade agreement yesterday are different from the European countries 27 member bloc. India is also negotiating the trade pact with the United Kingdom and trade pact with the European Union. The agreement will come into force after the ratification by these EFTA, European Free Trade Association, these four countries. So investment is a unique achievement, again I am telling you. And that's why our Minister of Commerce has said that for the first time in the history of world that we are inking an FTA with binding commitments of investment of around $100 billion. When we look at why the timing of signing is also crucial for India, you see that India currently is going into an election cycle, and there are around 64 countries which are going to the election this particular year. So the free trade agreements etc can take a pause because free trade agreements actually had some clauses in which some duty of products will have to be reduced, some duty of products may be raised, some targets. So here and there actually free trade agreements are a mechanism of give and take. So one country gives and another country also takes in the form, and it also gives somewhere. So suppose say we are giving some import duty reduction to these countries, we would be also getting something in return. But those industries which are getting hampered by the tariff reduction, import tariff reduction, can then rise above and can protest also in an election cycle. But even when the elections are near and India has negotiated a trade deal, then it is a wonderful achievement. Why the timing is significant? You must have seen that the supply chains across the globe are, after COVID period, they are now being redefined. Countries are trying to move away the supply chains from China. Why they do want? Because Chinese, after Corona period, we have seen how the Chinese used the supply chains to their advantage into the global disadvantage. Countries are looking India as a favorable alternate destination, plus one mechanism. Can India bring to table all those instruments which are needed for a successful supply chain initiatives? So India does want that we can also become a global supply chain manufacturing powerhouse, and for that purpose $100 billion commitment will be definitely playing a big role, and FTAs will also play a big role, because in FTA you also see that there is a global rebalancing of supply chains. You must have seen that efficiency of the production also happens when those products which are produced by a country, well, if they are produced by that country only, then that product always remain innovation and always actually duty less, while those products actually which a country wants and does not have the economies of scale, that have its own problem. So India wants that other countries like Vietnam, Mexico cannot get the advantage of such supply chain reconfiguration. India's push for investment commitment in EFTA is also significant, because we have seen after signing of FTAs with countries like ASEAN, countries like other countries in which India, country like China, etc., the trade deficit with these countries have increased multifold. India does want to reduce this kind of situation again. So when there is an investment commitment by those countries for which India will be reducing the import tariffs, once that happens, India will get investment commitment. Those companies actually either will come to India or will partner some companies here and will start manufacturing. Once they start manufacturing, India's import dependence on other countries will reduce. As we know that the India EFTA deal or India's trade deal with these four countries, there is a commitment to generate economic activity and jobs, and that too in the sectors like pharma, chemical sectors, food processing sectors, and engineering sectors. If investment flows into pharma, chemical sector, food processing sector, and engineering sectors, it can be a win-win for our country, because these are the four sectors on which India is dependent on other countries, especially China. You must have seen the trade deficit in the chemical sector is somewhere around $30 billion with vis-a-vis China. So if $100 billion is investment into our country in any of these sectors, then India can see that the manufacturing prowess can increase and reduce in the reduction can happen on the dependence on China. When we talk about legal obligation also about the investment commitment, that what if the country's investment does not come, then India can always have the instrument that they can limit the import reduction that will happen to these countries. So this is the EFTA. India's EFTA two-way trade was $18 billion in 2022 compared with $27 billion in 2021. The trade deficit for India is also close to $15 billion. Among these countries, Switzerland is the largest trading partner of our country. So this particular topic called FTA can be helpful with your answers in GS3. How it can be GS3? Because in GS3 it will be asked in economy, are FTAs beneficial for India's economy or not? So first of all, you can write your answers in this manner, that free trade agreements no doubt reduce the import tariffs for one country and gives the market access to another country. Market access allows lot many production into those countries, and those products can flow down into the host country. In that aspect, actually it can redefine the supply chains, that the country which is efficient enough and which produces globally competitive products can get production at scale, and other products actually which are produced in lesser quantities or the country does not produce them altogether can then shift away from those geographies. So efficiency of the production happens. Labor relocation also happens, that the skilled labor can only go to those sectors which the country is efficient in production. The benefit of FTA is also that when there is an economic trade between two countries, then it brings its own geopolitical advantage. That those two countries which are under a good trade commercial pacts, they will never fight against each other interest, and if they fight against each other's interest, it becomes very rarely. But there are many situations that happen with FTAs also, and one is regarding the tariff reduction and the effect of tariff reduction on the local manufacturing of those particular sectors. Second is also seen in the trade deficit. As we have seen that, after the agreement that we signed with Asian countries, our trade deficit even increased further. So trade deficit actually can cause significant foreign earnings, those are earned by some things, flow down to those countries. Even the FTA's major disadvantage is also that, after long hours of or after long years of negotiations, you then be able to improve it. So the time that actually goes into renegotiation also becomes a drag, and that's why it also affects the production. But the new clauses that India is either renegotiating FTAs or bringing in new clauses like the investment targets are definitely a welcome step and should help address India's concerns about the free trade agreements regarding trade deficit, global reconfiguration of import tariffs, etc. India can also benefit in the sense that global supply chain reconfiguration opportunity after COVID crisis in China and across the globe, India can become one of the major power of manufacturing. So this you can use in GS3. In GS2 you can utilize in foreign affairs. Foreign affairs, when suppose say India's relation with these four countries like Switzerland, Liechtenstein, etc. is Iceland, etc. is asked, you can mention the free trade agreement point there and say that the investment targets and the FTA will definitely bring a lot of lot of matters into the each other's thought process and will help these countries to grow their relations faster. Now we talk about the Karnataka water crisis. Karnataka water crisis can also be a GS1 question in geography, that why the cities have been having the water crisis. Even in GS3 also this can be asked. So we know that Karnataka water crisis has affected close to 7,000 villages and 1,100 wards. The problem actually encompasses Karnataka's Mandya district and Mysuru district, which are itself Kaveri watershed and Krishna Sagar Dam particular region, and both are important source of water to Bengaluru. Why? Because it has happened because Karnataka's capital Bengaluru has hit the headlines because the effect of the water crisis are wider. Distal clause is insufficient rainfall. So first of all it will be asked that why. So you can say that the river bed of these particular district Mandya and Mysuru districts are located in the Kaveri river watershed and Krishna Sagar dam areas. Even there is insufficient rainfall also last year. Following the rainfall surplus in 2022 and resulting under replenishment of water in Kaveri, erratic rainfall has been the major concern. So erratic rainfall is an area of concern because that also does not replenish the water in these river beds. And if there is no river water, then it can affect the water particularly into that particular areas. Rainy season over Kodagu has shrunk by 2 weeks in 3 decades. So there is another study. So number one, erratic rainfall. Number two, there is another actually a study that is assessed by 60 years of data, and it is found that rainy season over Kodagu has shrunk by 2 weeks in 3 decades. So the annual rainfall seemed to have undulated in the 12 to 14 year cycle. So there is a bigger problem that the election that the rain period that used to be, it has reduced by close to 2 to 3 weeks, and because of that also replenishment is not happening. Third is, as we have seen that Bengaluru consumes roughly 1400 million liters a day each from Kaveri and groundwater reserves. The groundwater recharge rate is also much lower. So third reason is the groundwater rate recharge is much lower. So third reason you can give is the groundwater recharge rate is very very poor, and that's why that is also an issue. Kaveri was compromised by last year's deficient rains. These are deficits only relative to Bengaluru's demands. The situation is worse further away from the city centers. This is ironic because these areas do not receive piped water from Kaveri, and those particular areas, because of these situations, those areas which do not have the piped water supply are the one actually which will get most affected, because piped water supply can happen from any other areas, and if there is no particular piped water supply, then those areas which are water deficient will definitely have more problems. So these 4 5 issues you can write while mentioning your answer, that why the cities are having the water crisis. Even the fourth reason you can write that the seasonal lakes have also dwindled. Seasonal lakes actually which used to appear in the rainy season or any other time, they have also dwindled because of the concretization around the city. Perennial lakes have also been strangled, and all those areas like shallow water bodies, lagoons, etc. have also been taken over by the rampant concretization and sewage issues. You know that once the sewage is released into the water, it increases the biological oxygen demand, and once it increases the biological oxygen demand, then it dries up that particular lake over a period of time. So these 4 5 reasons you can write and build your answers in the GS section 1. Then what is the another cause? So you can also write that climate change is another one of the phenomena. Climate change is also one of a crisis. It precipitates non-linear changes that lead to more disproportionate and sometimes irreversible outcomes, forcing underprepared governments to mount rapid responses to forces. So all those 5 6 reasons you can write about the city's water crisis. Now what is the solution? So you can say that solution 1 can be saving the groundwater, so we can replenish it and we can recharge. Number 2, to reuse the wastewater. How to reuse? So all those companies which are, or all those areas through either sewage or chemical waters, etc., can then be used for captive waters for those particular manufacturing industries. So this has to be made more into the city's master plan. Number third can be a circular water economy that maximizes the utility of every liter, that can reduce the city's dependence on external resources. Number 4 also can be one of that, at the time of construction we should look that whatever the have these kind of areas where the construction is to happen, any lake, say seasonal lake or lagoons, have been earlier there or not. If these kind of things were there earlier, we should stop actually that kind of plan to concretize that particular area, because until and unless the rains come and water is seeped into the groundwater, if we do the concretization, then the water will run away, and running away water will not give you the groundwater recharge, and it will create even a flood like situation, and that water will pass away quickly and will not be able to replenish your water sources. So these 5 6 reasons you can write that what we should do. So this particular topic is of a wonderful example for GS1. We now come to the election campaigns spending. What is the election campaign? Election campaign, that the parties go into the election mode, and as you know that up to like 95 lakh a candidate can spend on a Lok Sabha election, and close to 70 lakh can be spent in an MLA election. Beside that, the parties also, so 95 lakh rupees is the limit for Lok Sabha, and 75 lakh rupees is the Lok Sabha in the higher states, and 75 lakh rupees is the limit in the smaller states for Lok Sabha elections. So this is the election limit spending. And after, also beside it, there are election spending which happen by a political party, just like a BJP or a Congress, etc., will spend on its own, either on star campaigners or on other poll related materials, etc. So this is the total election spending. Why the election related spending is important? Because in number 2, GS2, you can write down the answers in the form of what are the election reforms. So you can mention election spending related thing in the GS2 answer. In GS2 answer, the question can also be asked in the form of that, what are the election campaign, if the elections are funded by the government, then what are the pros and cons. Even the question can be asked like this. So we can then mention in the start of our answer that in a democratic country, it is absolutely essential for a government to spread awareness about the schemes and policies. Even in the schemes and policies, what the government do about its own program and policies, it makes people aware. But through even government ads in the ads in the newspapers or in social media, etc., through the government expenditure, it also negates the level playing field. Why? Because close to the election cycle, the newspapers start appearing, so the news articles start appearing in the newspaper, advertisement start appearing in the newspaper about the government work. But vis-a-vis opposition, this becomes a challenge because the opposition does not have that kind of facility. So the election reforms have been also proposed by many political analysts, that the government aid should stop before 6 months when the election cycle starts. So that can be one of the election reforms that you can mention. Number one was that whatever the government is spending, advertisement happens, they should stop before 6 months. So one you can write like that. Another you can write about the state election expenditure limits. Expenditure limit, as I told you, 95 lakh rupees for Lok Sabha in the larger states, 75 lakh rupees in the smaller states. So you can say that this particular limit also should include other expenditure that have been done by the parties in their names, either through star campaigners or through other expenditure, or even a digital expenditure that is done by the party across the country, and that should also be put into this one. According to an estimate, India spends close to 50,000 crore rupees on an election, but that happens informally. Now, the Indrajit Gupta committee, you should remember 2-3 committees whenever we are talking about the election expenditure. Indrajit Gupta committee and Law Commission report 1999. Indrajit Gupta committee and Law Commission report advocated state funding of elections. So whenever there is a question that appears in the examination, that write about the pros and cons of the state funding of election, then you should write, you can start your answer like this one, that the Indrajit Gupta committee and the Law Commission advocated state funding of election. State funding of election means the government will contribute money to the political parties or candidates so that they can contest the elections. The feasibility and mechanism for implementation of this measure can become beneficial because number one, it will reduce the dependence of money. It will reduce the dependence of those members who want to fight elections on money itself. Because when you see that the limit is just like 95 lakh rupees for Lok Sabha elections, if a person does not have, suppose say, close to this money, then he may or he may not think to even fight elections. So that can be one of the, it can remove actually and increase the democratic participation. It can remove these kind of disparities and increase the democratic participation. State funding of election can also reduce the chances of quid pro quo. That today, suppose say you are fighting an election and you are taking this particular chanda from any other political party members or something like that, or any corporate, etc. Tomorrow if you win, then you would like to take back that particular money from the state coffers through any kind of deceivement of policy or any other matter. So chances of corruption also increase. So when there is a state funding of election, then the burden on your own pocket actually reduces, and that's why the chances of quid pro quo in policy can also reduce. So it can further embolden our democracy. Number third can also be that there can be discipline among the political parties on the spending limits, because there is no spending limit in the country informally. Parties spend no amount of money, whatever money actually they want to spend. So that can also stop. But there are also cons attached with the state funding of election, that what will be the mechanism. Some members of the election commission earlier have suggested that the mechanism can be that whoever got how many of votes, they will be allotted this particular funding in proportion to their voting percentage. So suppose say a party has got 46% of vote will then receive a state funding of 46% of the fund that has been created. But a particular political party which is in its infancy, suppose it has not got, and they have also talked about, the limit should be, below limit should be 1%, that those parties which only get the votes above 1%, they will only get state funding. But what about those parties which does not get the votes below 1%, from where they will bring their own money? And in case they don't bring your own money, then actually how will they be able to fight the elections? So number one con can be this about the state funding. Number two, with the state funding, there should be mechanism in which there is a close scrutiny, and the audit system also has to be much more reliable, because you need to audit the accounts of political parties in much more pinpointed manner, and audit the accounts of the individual candidates also. How? Because auditing will definitely help, otherwise we will not be able to know where the taxpayers money have gone. So these are 2 3 points you can write in the particular. So in GS2, in election campaign, you can utilize this particular arguments. Third is gig workers. Gig workers, as you know, in GS3, gig workers, those industries which do not give you a formal appointment, and which only award you the appointment actually which are changed according to the situation and time. So these workers are not fixed to a particular a company or a group or a particular sector. In this category of workers comes like cab drivers, Zomato, or food deliveries people, etc. So the gig workers, there is a study that they suffer from lack of social security and regulations. So whenever there is a particular topic appearing in GS3 regarding gig workers, etc., you can always write down that yes, gig work actually allows them to get employment, and the new technology working areas have allowed them to increase their own participation in the economy in the form of employment generating sectors. But because of the lack of social security and regulations, these people have been struggling. The study also says that more than 83% work more than 10 hours, while most of the cab drivers work 14 hours a day. 60% of cab drivers work over 12 hours a day, according to a study of more than 10,000 Indian cab drivers, gig and platform workers. Even social disparities make the situation worse, with over 60% of the drivers from scheduled castes and scheduled tribes working for 14 hours a day, while only 16% from the unreserved category work such long hours. So they say that there is a discrimination, or even SCs and ST drivers actually are working longer hours. Number two, close to 83% of the drivers work more than 10 hours a day, while those people who are in the formal sector of employment or are the government sector of employment earn more in case they work more. Then comes that what can be the solution. So you can write down that there should be some sort of regulation on the basis of which actually social security benefits for them can be enhanced. Some social security packages can also be implemented, so that if there is a particular need, emergent situation to these particular workers, these regulations can then help them. We now move to the next topic. So before moving to the next topic, we can always say tomorrow we will talk about the next topics, because in 12th March what will appear, we will talk about it. But I would like to again request you that follow these in a timely manner, so that you can always get the news in a best possible manner. You can then relate these newspaper to your answer writing, and where you can utilize even in essay paper. Suppose say any of the technology, how you use gig workers in an essay paper. Suppose say essay you need to write about the technologies benefits or advantages or regulations, etc. You can always mention that gig workers is also a field where technology has given no doubt an advantage about these, but with technology or with such these kind of working situations also comes its own challenges like social security and other regulations. Thank you for listening to this channel. For more such videos, you can like the button and subscribe the channel. Thank you.